If all the games are close and these guys are competing in 50-point games, you can't have the disaster that you had last night where the competence of the players seems to be greater than the competence of the people officiating the players. Also, though, Amin, seems like an impossible game to officiate. Seems wholly impossible. Everyone's gotten too athletic. How do I stop him from scoring without fouling him? So, Tom Haberstroh, the latest thing that's happened here. Because, Amin, you tell me, have you seen in your career a lot of what's playing out publicly right now where the players are complaining this loudly about the credibility of their officiated product?
Yeah, I try to remain kind of present and not get caught up in now for two reasons. One is obviously the recency bias, that things that are happening now feel like they've happened more than ever before. But the other thing also is we are in an era where if someone complains about the refs, we're getting it instantly from all over the league at once. And so 20 years ago, guys would complain about refs, and you may have to wait till the next day to either read about it in the paper or watch it on SportsCenter. Now it's instantaneous. So again, are they more complaints than ever, or are we just hearing all the complaints? Tom, I'd open it up to you. What do you think?
What is the level of crisis here, Tom? Because you're the nation's authority on actually knowing how these referees are graded. You have expertise here.
Yeah, I just got a text from an executive who said the officiating has been embarrassing all season. That this is not an anomaly. What we saw last night where Josh Hart is calling out the officials on a Jimmy Butler non-call. You had Luka Doncic, one of the biggest stars in the world. Like, he's doing a money sign, a money gesture at an official on national TV in a game. Mark Cuban is protesting or filing a protest on a game because of a botched call or miscommunication in the third quarter. And then you had an official who's been in the spotlight over the past couple of weeks because of the Fred VanVleet thing, the rant. That official had to admit to a blown call at the buzzer with two teams that are fighting for playoff position. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, we had Anthony Davis earlier this season saying the Lakers were getting cheated out of games because of the officiating, one of the biggest stars in the NBA. So this is not like what happened last night. To me, feels like an officiating Armageddon where every game it seemed like things were going awry. But if you talk to executives and players and coaches, like, this has been going on all season, and the trust that these players and teams and coaches and executives have with officiating, I think it's as low as it's been since I've been covering the league.
Before we get to this Jason Kidd sound, can I just give you this Mark Cuban quote on Twitter? For those wondering about the play with 1:54 to go on the third, let me explain what happened. The ref called Mavs ball. The announcer announced it. Then there was a timeout. During the timeout, the official changed the call and never told us. Then when they saw us line up as if it were our ball, he just gave the ball to the Warriors. Never said a word to us. They got an easy basketball. He meant basket. Crazy that it would matter in a 2-point game. Worst officiating non-call mistake possibly in the history of the NBA. All they had to do was tell us, and they didn't.
You know, the weird thing is, and Tom, maybe you can tell me this. If they thought it was their ball, why wasn't there anyone near the ref, near the ball at the inbound spot? Why would they think because it's a third quarter, it's not like you would have moved up the court. Why would they?
So I think what's interesting, and let's hear this. I like what Jason Kidd said after the game. I think that's interesting. We gotta hear that.
It wasn't really explained. I think there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people were out of position. So when you look at the court was split. We're on one side and the Warriors on another, and you have a referee on the baseline. Mike was on the baseline, so I would assume Mike thought it was our ball too. So, to explain to Mike or ask Mike, like, if there's confusion, it's easy to just come in and blow the whistle and get us restarted. Because it was confusion, understanding that we thought it was our ball. The referee pointed towards our bench, but that was the signal of the timeout. And so, but there was confusion on the play before it even started with whose ball it was, because he pointed, I thought, to us first, and then he changed it and then went to a timeout and pointed to us. So as I asked Mike, I said, Mike, why are you down the floor if you don't think if it's not our ball? And so there was quite a few people out of position on that play. It's easy, it's correctable, but you first have to admit there was a mistake.
Tom, can we just examine, I mean, if we can examine the particulars of this, or we can examine the idea that these players are now getting to such a level of perfectionism and where they've extended the sport that they're asking referees to be as good at their jobs as they are at their jobs. And it's just a disconnect that the referees aren't going to be that competent.
Well, I think an aspect of this that's looming over all of this is a few months ago, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, the NBA Players Association, the NBA, and the NBA Referees Association had a joint statement where it looked like they were aligned and they were going to be far more punitive to anybody that has rebellious acts on the courts towards officiating. And it seems as though on the heels of that, maybe everybody was playing nice for a little bit, but now we're all coming to a head. And that statement seems ridiculous because we've never had this kind of open insubordination of officiating.
That's happened before, Mike. Like a few years ago, I remember there was a meeting, like a clandestine meeting where between the players and the referee union, and they were meeting, I think, at All-Star break in LA. I don't know if me and you remember this. Mm-hmm. And it was essentially like, all right, we butted heads all season, but we're going to get back into it, and we're going to be nicer to each other, and everything's fine. We do this all the time. Like, we have these statements, public statements, about how everything's been reconciled, and we're going to be more professional, but it unravels. The trust between the players and the officiating clearly is at an impasse. I mean, we don't have Fred VanVleet eating that fine, $30,000, and then other players pointing to that fine and saying, like, listen to Fred VanVleet. I'm not going to speak on it, but listen to Fred VanVleet. It just, we're not even at the playoffs. So it's this bad, Mike, and we haven't reached the playoffs where things get heightened to an extreme. So look, this Dallas Mavericks play, it's a clear misunderstanding, a clear communication breakdown. I don't think Mark Cuban's going to win this one. There hasn't been a protest that has been accepted by the league since 2008, I believe. But he's right. Jason Kidd is right. An official was on the Dallas side of the floor, while the other official is inbounding it, a clear miscommunication among the officials, right? And so I think what players are saying is, if you guys can't even get on the same page, then how are we supposed to be on the same page? Communication, trust, all of it seems to be very damaged now across the league.
Yeah, communication issues on multiple fronts, right? Because not just among the officials, but the chief complaint, and Jason Kidd mentioned it, and so have other Mavericks players, is the mistake was made, and then no one talks to them. They just have their chin up, and no one explains anything, and it feels like they're totally robbed of something with zero explanation.
But isn't it just pool reporting, Tom? Isn't they go back to some closet somewhere in the arena, and then one reporter is sent over to ask 4 questions? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, there's a pool reporter that's assigned for every NBA game. As I understand it, this is the current rule, is that they have to submit the questions beforehand to the league that is given to the crew chief, not the referee in question. Like Andy Nagy, who was the referee that inbounded the ball to the Golden State Warriors and made the call for the Golden State Warriors, he did not answer those questions. It was the crew chief, which, by the way, if you're one of the top 75 officials in the NBA and you're an NBA official, I think we should be able to answer those questions. Explain it yourself. I don't know why we're protecting these lower level officials from speaking in their minds or explaining the call. We don't have to have the crew chief explaining it. Anyway, the point is, there's no press conference after the game. They don't open questions to the 3 officials. It's like 1 or 2 questions to the crew chief. In this case, it was Sean Wright. And when Jason Kidd is talking there about Mike, he's talking about one of the officials, the second in the totem pole. The second official is actually Michael Smith. He was the one on the Dallas side. He did not answer questions after the game. It was Sean Wright. It was not Andy Nagy who was the one inbounding it. And to me, I just feel like the credibility there's a gap between players and officials. Is like Anthony Davis said a few months ago, I think officials should be fined. I think when they botch calls or when they blow calls, they should be fined, punished by the league. And I feel like they are asking for more transparency, more accountability. And I think when you have crew chiefs speaking for other officials in 1 or 2 part questions, I feel like there's more we can do to increase the credibility, increase the transparency.
By the way, Mark Cuban texted the same thing to our Matt Sullivan, the play, and say even one of the refs was missing and thought it was our ball. So that is something, I guess, a speaking point for Dallas. But Tom, referees are reprimanded, right? It's just not out in the open. But there is a structure there by which the league either rewards or punishes their referees.
Yeah, but they don't publicize that, right? Remember, Tony Brothers earlier this season in November, there was an incident in which he referred to Spencer Dinwiddie allegedly to a teammate as a BAMF, and it's not a bad AMF, it's the other one. And Mark Stein, he reported that there was a punishment to Tony Brothers.
I don't like bad MAF. I don't like any of that.
It's not bad AMF.
I don't know. And whatever that was, I don't like any of that.
You don't know.
No, just let it fly.
All right, bitch ass motherfucker.
Yes, Tony Brothers called Spencer Dinwiddie, then with the Dallas Mavericks, a bitch ass motherfucker, allegedly to a teammate. And Spencer Dinwiddie after the game was like, hold up. We can't let this happen. If Scott, he didn't take issue of Tony Brothers calling him that. He took issue with Tony Brothers calling him that to his teammate. He's like, hey, if you feel that way, tell me. Come to me and say that to my face. And so after that happened, Mark Stein reported, who's based in Dallas, one of the best reporters in the business, that Tony Brothers had been, I think the phrasing was he missed a game, that he was suspended a game, but he missed like 5 days in between assignments. That's as far as we got. The NBA didn't comment on it. We did not get any official punishment about Tony Brothers, if there was punishment. And so all this stuff is just shadowy, kind of in the dark. We don't really know. Whispers about referees being punished by the league. And so I think players are just asking, like, there's 13 people on the court that have direct influence on the game. The players, 10 of those, can be fined publicly. We know their salaries and all that. But the 3 others, the officials, are hidden from any sort of public reprimand on the punishment of, the discipline or anything like that.